Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're at. It's really exciting to see so many people and so many names and so many member organizations, but also organizations that are not members of Venro here today. I'm really new at Venro. I just joined 3 weeks ago as the new managing director. So this is actually one of the first online calls that I am able to listen into. So I'm really excited about that. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to also say hi to you in this moment. I did spend quite some time over the past 15 or so years to think about digital and civil society and what that means. I spent the last few years before I now joined Venro working within the Wikimedia movement, which is a civil society organization thinking about, talking about, working on things such as free internet and open access to information and all of these questions linked to the Wikipedias that we all know. So a international NGO that is really quite intensively, I'd say, thinking about these things, also about AI and this kind of developments that we all see. So I'm close to this topic. I've been close to this topic. So it's really nice to see also that our community is picking up on these discussions. As you all know, I think, is that Venro offers space for exchange and learning on all kinds of issues, and that we're very keen and we're trying to support and help our communities to think strategically on different things. I mean, today, this topic being the one, I think there have been two products that I have had a chance to look into very briefly over the past few weeks, and maybe all of you already know them, but one resource that Venro developed back in 2019, Tech for Good, and I'd say that a lot of the things that are in this resource, it's relevant still today. I think a lot of things that were raised there are things that we can take advantage of and use as discussion starters in our organizations today still. Another one, 1 year later or so, I think it's called Smart but Fair Digitalization, a similar resource. All relevant things, and I think we have quite some work still ahead of us to look into these kinds of things and develop them and understand what they mean for our organizations. Obviously, we also, as Venro, work in the area of digital civic space. That's a huge discussion, I think, that we might not go into today, but that's definitely also there. So just a few pointers for maybe also following up on this conversation today. But yes, today we will talk about an exchange in the area of use of artificial intelligence in the area of development cooperation and humanitarian assistance. It's the first, I think, kind of discussion on this topic, but very likely not the last, since we are seeing that this will be a topic that many of us will have to get better at understanding over the next years. I will wish you a productive and hopefully inspiring conversation and discussion with many new ideas over the next few hours. So again, thanks for joining, and thanks to my colleagues who've been setting all of this up. So really looking forward to the conversation over the next few hours.
Thank you, Åsa, for this warm welcome. And I'm excited to have you all here in this meeting today. The number of participants, I think, illustrates a lot of interest in this topic. And I look forward to hear your thoughts and experiences later on. And I want to briefly introduce myself. My name is Lukas Galteman, and I work as a policy advisor for Venro in Berlin. And I also expect that the current developments in generative artificial intelligence applications will have a significant impact on the way that we work, both as individuals and as organizations. However, it is, of course, difficult to see clearly what these changes will actually look like. And some of the very basic questions around these applications, for example, ChatGPT that was already mentioned, and others are, what opportunities do they offer for us? How can we navigate the risks? And what skills and capabilities do we need? And how will this change our jobs and our organizations? And to get a better understanding of these issues, we've launched a survey back in April, the use of ChatGPT and other artificial intelligence applications in civil society projects in the Global South. And The aim of the survey was to gather first-hand experiences with AI tools, and we want to map various use cases for transnational civil society work. I will briefly present to you some of the findings. First, something about the level of experience, and then the potentials and risks. We asked the participants why they have used ChatGPT and other applications of this form in their professional contexts. And so most people said they use it for text production purposes. So things like speech and text writing, blog content, emails, letters. The other big topic is research purposes. So acquiring general information about things, gathering background information, brainstorming, or getting inspiration for texts and so on is something that was mentioned very frequently. Then language translation was also mentioned many times. Creative ideation, for example, when it comes to graphic design or some advertisements. People have used it for Excel or web page management. So for Excel code writing. And then the last point is exploring AI, so just the general experimentation with this and to see what this can do and what it cannot do. So I want to look at we also asked, what is the potential that you see for your work? Again, of course, text production is and research purposes are at the top. But people say they also want to use it for data analysis, also to improve their workflows and their communication. So we see that there are a couple of things people, see some potential use cases here, but the vast majority is still for text production and research. Now I come to the risks that people have identified. The big risk is, by far the biggest, is data security. And also people have issues around this thing of, quality of information. We'll look in the details in a moment. Copyright issues, the algorithms behind it, the bias that's in the algorithms, and also some personal effects. So to look in more detail what people actually mean by this, data security, I think, is quite clear. So I guess the question is, what happens to the data that you put into applications like ChatGPT? Perhaps you've heard that some companies have banned their staff from using it because they fear that some secrets can get out there because ChatGPT and others store all the information that you enter. So you kind of pay for the service by feeding it information. And then this issue, when will it come out again? Then the other big issue is the quality of information. So people are concerned that information provided can be inaccurate, that usually there aren't any supporting references, so it's difficult to check where certain facts are coming from, and it is also known that these algorithms also produce misinformation. So they just invent things, and so it can be difficult to detect what's fact and what is not. And then lastly, what I also think is quite interesting, there was the fear that this could contribute to a general homogenization of CSO proposals and reports. So, the more and more it is being used, that perhaps the texts that are being put online might or are used for reports or proposals are increasingly looking very similar. Then there's a big issue of copyright that people identified. Where does the information come from that was entered? Because ChatGPT, it's relies on the training data, and that might be the intellectual property of someone else. So how do you cite the output? What is the authorship? That's sort of some of these issues. Then there were some concerns voiced in terms of the algorithm behind it. So one of the things is, does the quantity of the data that was put into the system, does it mean that this is actually credible information? I'm sure we will talk about this as well. We see that a lot of fake online content is already online. And so the question arises, can fake news be detected? And we also have the issue that marginalized voices are not represented in the data that was fed into the system. So we come to the next point, which is the bias. So the algorithm tends to reproduce some of these deeply rooted societal problems, racism, sexism, and so on in its output. And also that, most of the content comes from the global north, especially from the English-speaking countries there. And so the question is, how does this affect the performance of these models? And then lastly, the personal effects. Some people are concerned with things like job loss, that there might be an over-reliance on artificial intelligence in the future, or that this leads to a loss of creativity and innovation in the long run. We have 3 fantastic panelists with us today that will give you some insights into their experiences and their views on generative artificial intelligence and the opportunities and also the risks that they have identified. So we have Mong Palatino. He's a blogger, activist, and former legislator based in Manila. He's a blogger and journalist, and his writings have been published by Global Voices, The Diplomat, and other outputs. He's one of the fellows of the 2022 Asia Pacific Region Internet Governance Forum, and he's the Secretary General of BAYAN, a multi-sectoral alliance of people's organizations in the Philippines. I would also like to welcome Teresa Steiger, who works as a project manager for the project Reframe Tech in the program Digitalization and the Common Good at the Bertelsmann Foundation. She focuses primarily on the opportunities offered by algorithmic systems for the common good. For example, managing the project Tech Exploration for social service organizations, in which welfare service employees and IT fellows have identified concrete ideas for the use of algorithms and AI in the welfare services sector and its nonprofit organizations. And previously, she was a consultant in the project Forum Digitalization and Engagement of the Federal Network for Civic Engagement. And lastly, I want to welcome Johannes Schunter. He has been working in various knowledge management and innovation roles with the United Nations Development Program for 15 years, where he was, among other things, developing and implementing UNDP's global knowledge management strategy and running the UNDP's Innovation Accelerator Lab for the Pacific region. And today he is based in Berlin, Germany, as a lead expert on knowledge management for Bread for the World, Diakonie, and he's spearheading the 3 agencies' work on generative AI and knowledge management. So a warm welcome to you. Teresa, what is artificial intelligence? What are we actually talking about today?
It's a hard question to answer, actually, because we've seen a rapid development in the realm of artificial intelligence in general in the last years and in decades even. and even more rapid innovation in the domain of generative AI in the last year. So in the last years, but mainly in the last year. And ChatGPT is the poster boy, if you may. We all know it by name, at least. Some of us have used it. But ChatGPT is just one example of a product that is coming from the area of large language models, and that is the main new the new AI, generative AI models are these large language models on which the chatbot in the case of ChatGPT is built on. But there are others that would be, for instance, image generating models that we've probably also all seen before, and so on. And these so-called foundational models are being already deployed in various sectors, like in health, in finance, in advertisement, you name it. So it's sometimes it seems like a very big experiment because these models are fairly new and they're already deployed in the real world. But how does it work? So generative AI, and I use a very basic non-technical definition for it. So generative AI works by using machine learning models or machine learning algorithms to analyze large amounts of data, so vast amounts of data. And these machine learning algorithms learn, in air quotes, the patterns and relationships in these data sets. And these data sets are human-created content. And you already went into this. It's basically the internet and lots of human-made texts and images and sounds and all different kinds of data. And then these machine learning algorithms generate new content based on this previous data. So this is the main contrast with what we have already known, which are rule-based algorithms that are very are very predefined, and the generative part of AI is that it creates new content, but always keep in mind it creates new content based on previous data. So it's not that innovative and it's not very new in most of the cases. And so these different models and different products can create a wide variety of data, such as images, videos, audio, text, and code. So there are lots of different products.
Okay, thank you for this overview. And you've worked in the social services sector. And can you perhaps give us some, examples or an idea of what kind of consequences have you observed with regards to this technology, or what do you see might happen, especially in the nonprofit sector?
We've seen so many products, and ChatGPT is like the prominent one that is being developed almost exclusively for economic purposes or to maximize efficiency. And while the potential for public interest concerns of the common good, that we call it the common good, remains largely untapped. And so this means that the focus in the development of AI often lies too much on the technical solution itself and less on improving the participation opportunities and even the quality of life of the groups that are mostly affected by the technology. And that has to change, in short. And that brings me to my core message and also the motto of our project, Reframe Tech, Algorithms for the Common Good. We have to be committed to ensuring that efforts to develop and use these algorithms and the generative AI systems to be more closely aligned with the common good. This has to become more relevant with the advances even in generative AI. And with I mean civil society organizations of all kinds, organizations like yours that work in advancing the common good every day. And you do this in various fields that maybe have nothing to do with AI or even digitalization. But the discourse around these systems and also the development and the use of AI should be more dominated by these value-driven actors to show that technology can be deployed in a good way and that it can help to solve societal problems while always being closely monitored and having very narrow guardrails. So our approach is not, there's this thing called techno-solutionism. This is not what we want to promote. It means that you can throw any complex algorithmic or artificial system on any kind of problems and it's solved and we have no problems anymore. This is not what we mean. And don't be blinded by the bling and the hype around generative AI. There are already enough harmful systems out there, but the technology is out there. It won't go away, and we can harness it to do good and to help us in our projects as us as a society. And wouldn't that be nice for change?
Yeah, thank you. We will go into more detail about the potential, but also the potential opportunities, but also the potential harm that we see in a moment. I want to pass over now to Mong Palatino, and I'm curious to hear from you what your perspective is on generative AI and its use and impact on civil society in the Philippines, and perhaps you can also give us a broader overview of your work sort of as a digital rights activist. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucas. So we are curious about generative AI. We are thrilled about its potential. At the same time, we have questions about it. While we are curious about its potential, it has already been released to the public. The public are already using it. And so at the same time, we are afraid about its long-term consequences. We are curious about how it can benefit our work in terms of improving the delivery of services, improving communication, engaging the public. But at the same time, we are coming from a situation where the access to internet is not that good. So what would it mean in a society where there is deep digital divide? On the other hand, we also recognize that access did not prevent the ubiquitous use of social media over the past few years. So we believe AI will continue to be used. It will continue to be popular in the next coming years. Another issue is we're coming from a situation where we are just reeling from the impact of disinformation. And we are busy engaging in communities about teaching the public, engaging the public about media literacy, combating disinformation. And then here comes generative AI. What will be the impact of generative AI in combating disinformation? Will it be a tool to stop disinformation or another challenge? And when we say disinformation, we're not just talking about private sector led disinformation, but state-sponsored disinformation. Disinformation that manipulates elections, disinformation that is bad for governance, but also bad for the public. So my next point is we are coming from 2 years of pandemic lockdown. And during those 2 years of pandemic lockdown, they imposed several restrictions. And then after they removed the lockdowns, here comes AI. It's like a revenge internet innovation that was poised to the public. 2 years of lockdown, and then here comes AI. But at the same time, the laws passed during the lockdown remain. So in many societies, there is still a state of emergency, and they are using these laws to target critics, to target independent reporting. So our fear is that generative AI can create innovative content, but that content can also be deemed as a threat to public order. And so what will happen if there will be regulation and there will be weaponization of laws against this. So it's not a question of whether we will use it or not. The public are already using it. It will be continued to be developed. So coming from an organization that has fact-checking initiatives in the communities, our lesson is that it's not enough that you conduct 1 or 2 fact-checking sessions or trainings. It should be sustained. It should be a program. So our idea about generative AI is that there should be a sustained effort as well on teaching the public, reminding the public about how best we can deal or use AI for our activities, instead of simply rejecting it or instead of simply welcoming it. The conversation should continue, and then there should be an active interaction between the private sector, authorities, those developing the technology, and for us in the civil society, about the emphasis on human rights and digital rights, especially if the state will have some legislation about it. It should come first instead of simply policing of the internet or policing of the AI.
Yeah, thank you. You talk about the some of the concerns that you have around weaponization of digital technologies. Perhaps you could tell us a little bit more about this sort of the triangle of tech companies on the one hand, governments trying to handle new technologies, and then on the third options of the human rights concerns and civic space issues. So how do they interact with each other, or how has this happened? How has this worked in the past, say with the big social media companies?
We have our experience, especially with big tech companies, is that they have been generally unresponsive to our demand for more accountability, especially since many of them are blindly adopting our government sponsored list of content that they deem dangerous. So for us, it means the blocking of several pages, the blocking of content deemed dangerous or harmful by the state. So in one of the sessions I attended last week, we are drafting a proposal about how tech companies can be more transparent about the algorithms that they are using, transparent about their interaction with governments. So that is one. The second is we are engaging our legislators about prioritizing digital rights legislation instead of simply, for example, there are pending proposals on criminalizing fake news, social media registration. I mean, we are continuing our lobbying with our legislators that we should first prioritize improving digital access, teaching digital rights, data protection. These are the things that should be prioritized. So, and then on the issue of engaging the public, we are currently active in media literacy and fact-checking sessions and trainings.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, media literacy is sort of a good topic. I mean, it's sort of the topic, I guess, for our meeting today as well in some way. And you mentioned transparency and accountability of tech companies as sort of a key goal to navigate sort of this space that opens up when new technologies are introduced by companies. I want to, before I come to you, Johannes, I want to sort of pass the ball back to Teresa to hear, your how is this what Mong just stated? Sort of how does it resonate with your work and civil society, and
because it resonates a lot. So you put it more into practical implications for your work. because I would say that as I said before, so NGOs should be more concerned about the developments in AI due to the potential social consequences that they pose. And I know that you all probably use the systems or will use them. It's not a question of if we should use them or not, but it's a question of how we use them. But not just the how, but the what will the societal implications what will they be? Because you work in context of, or you work directly with vulnerable populations and strive to promote social good. And if you are more engaged in this discourse and advocating for fairness or transparency or addressing society impact and bridging the digital divide, what you also said, Mong, I think that NGOs could contribute to a more ethical and more inclusive deployment of AI, hopefully in the future. And I mean, this sounds maybe all a bit too meta. I also have we did the tech exploration in the welfare sector, but I don't know, Lucas, if we want to come to that later in the discussion, because that's more on a practical level.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, no, it's a good, let's talk about, so the question of how we can use this technology. And perhaps you can tell us a little bit about the tech exploration after Johannes, after you, can tell us a little bit more about how do you approach the applicability of ChatGPT in your organization, and perhaps also how did you end up as the ChatGPT person at Bread for the World?
Thanks so much, and thanks for the invite. I'm coming from a knowledge management perspective, and the need for knowledge management at Bread for the World. Before I did that at the UN, and I've always seen that once AI goes mainstream, it will be a game changer for KM, because there's way too much information out there that can meaningfully process or that we could actually apply. And that has always been the challenge of knowledge management in any line of work. My line of work always has been the nonprofit international development world, that we can use the lessons from what we've been doing in the past, from projects, from innovations, and apply them to whatever we are about to do now. And that was always very hard, because nobody can have all the lessons from the past in their head, or can do that translation effort in an easy way to apply it to a new scenario without having the actual people in the room who have been involved in the past projects. But AI can do that. And when ChatGPT was going public in November, I was basically sitting there all weekend and doing a deep dive, and very quickly realizing, like many others do, oh, this is it. This is that moment that we've been waiting for, because what happened is that for the first time, that technology, which has been in the works for a while, which has been on the radar for those who follow it, suddenly was available to everyone. And every user, you and me, could suddenly access it. And not only here in the West and in the North, but everywhere, everyone with an internet access. And start exploring what this does. And it's really kind of exploring, because we're still figuring it all out, including myself. This is like engaging with an alien species, where you still have to learn the language and how you're interacting, and where you really have no idea what's going on inside there, and where you have to learn how to treat it so it does what you need to do. So what I've been doing then at Bread for the World from that first weekend on was giving a briefing the next week. Hey, this is what's happening. This just launched. Take a look. Try it out. And since then, I've been doing monthly trainings with our colleagues, and I'm doing direct workshops with different business units. What we're basically doing is sitting down. Hey, what are you working on this week? What is the kind of knowledge work that you're doing? Let's see if we can utilize ChatGPT for it. And sometimes it doesn't work out well. The result is not good, whatever. And in other cases, it's an absolute game changer, because knowledge work is everything that has to do with text, and we're all knowledge workers. And this thing is really going to transform and is already transforming the way we are engaging with large bodies of text, how we're reading them, how we're consuming them, how we are generating text, and how we're doing analysis for ourselves. And the thing that we really need to do, and I fully agree with Mong there, is educate, educate, educate. We have to learn, trying out what this thing can do and understanding it and applying it in our own context. And it doesn't matter so much whether this was developed for a business purpose in mind, because all of our organizations, no matter what purpose we're serving, in the nonprofit space, we all have our internal processes. We all have to dealing with inefficiencies and processes, and it can help us in all of that. So I'm not so much concerned, is this a for-profit product that some for-profit companies have been developing? What I'm concerned with, are we understanding the potential that is in there for knowledge work? And from what I can see, people are dabbling with, people are trying it out, but the actual value still is not underexplored, I would say. And I see my role really in enticing people to try it out, to learn, because that's what we need to do, because it's the new world we are finding ourselves in. Like, give you an example, like I can give this thing an example of a job description from our organization, and I give it a project brief of a project I'm about to manage, and I need to hire a project manager for that. I can tell ChatGPT, hey, using this sample of a job description, please develop a job description for a project manager that is managing this project, and it does that in 30 seconds, where before I would have spent an hour doing it. Or I can say, hey, here is a project proposal, and here is a grant application form. I need to answer all these questions. Who are the beneficiaries, whatever. Answer this question in 300 words based on my project brief, and we'll do that in 30 seconds. And the result is in most cases better than the intern I might have in the house. And this is exactly how I have to deal with it. I have to deal with like an intern, a very fast one, whose work I have to check, because very often the result is still need to be revised because there are inaccuracies, hallucinations. And that's the same thing I have to do with an intern. I have to check the work. I'm responsible for the work. But the amount of time it saves me is quite staggering. Like, we are talking about productivity gains in the range from anything between 30, 40, 100%. Some people are multiplying their productivity in very specific tasks. So this is not a matter of, can it save me a little bit of time? We're talking about productivity gains that are on par with a steam engine, which was about introducing 40% productivity gains to the factories where steam power was introduced. And we all know what the steam engine did. It was responsible for the Industrial Revolution and transforming how societies worked. And the same thing is happening right now. This is not just the next interesting app. This is the next transformation of society. And we have to be ready for that, because there's no way to escape that. We have a role in shaping it. And I fully agree with Teresa that we have to have a stronger voice in shaping the path forward when it comes to regulation, when it comes to dealing with the impact it has on society. But most of all, what we have to do right now, we have to learn how this thing works, because we have to live and thrive in that new world. And if we just turn our work away, we might be hit by that wave that's rolling right now, thinking it has nothing to do with us, but then we're struggling for breath and swallowing water. Or we look at the wave and understanding it, and we're snatching a bodyboard, and in the right moment, because we understand the dynamics now, ride that wave wherever it takes us. I think that's the right attitude. And what I'm trying in our organization and with all the partners that we're working with is to teach them to ride that wave. Because the alternative is that we're getting drowned. And that's not what I wish on any of us. So this is the way we're going about it. And obviously there are large risks as well that we have to deal with. There's risk alone, the pace of change that we're experiencing, the pace at which this wave hits us is a risk in itself, because like the steam engine was introduced over decades, this thing is introduced over months. And the disruption that is happening in terms of like certain jobs becoming irrelevant, what took years and decades back then takes a few months now. Like copywriters, half of them will not be needed in 1 or 2 years from now. Basic graphic designers who like the basic stuff. They're all already seeing that effect. And I see people being in pain about it because they see their jobs being affected. And that's real disruption that we as a society have to respond to and deal with, not by banning ChatGPT or anything, which was kind of the worst option of all, but by enabling people to leverage it for their own work and finding new paths in their new work. Because at the end, every technology that was introduced resulted in a net gain of overall jobs, while certain professions went out of business. That's fully true. Like the weavers back then, being replaced by machines. The worst thing we probably can do is just to try to shut it down within our organizations, because that means that we're not learning. And not learning is about the worst thing we can do right now. Like not understanding how this thing works, what its limitations are, what its benefits are, how I can apply it in my everyday work to augment the work that I'm doing and make my impact more powerful. But it requires that we adjust the way we approach our work. Like a lot of the low-level knowledge work that we're dealing with every day, like dealing with text, summarizing this, extracting that piece of that large publication, whatever, that work is work that AI can do. So we will outsource that. So what we have to do instead, we are the ones who bring the intent. AI doesn't have that. We are the ones who have ideas. AI doesn't have that. We are the ones who have motivation and goals. So we will be the ones who are setting the goals, creating work packages, and delegating that to different AI entities. And then reviewing the work we get back, making judgment calls, applying good judgment, and making decisions. That's what we bring to the table. And that's actually what managers do. So what we will become in this new world as knowledge workers, we will become AI managers. We will not do the low-level knowledge work anymore. We become managers who send off AI to do some of the basic level work. We have to review it and we have to make decisions. Where I have the most concerns about AI when it comes to risk is that we outsource the decisions as well. And that's where it gets really sticky, because that's where all the bias issues comes up, the training data sets comes in, like how the black box issue comes in. Outsourcing decisions to AI, I think, is the biggest risk that I see, that something we should not do, or only should do on the really, really tight parameters. And what we should do, we should be managing AI to do information management work for us, help us as a reasoning partner, and then we are the ones applying judgment, setting goals, and making decisions. So this is basically the basic frames I would put it, but I'm happy to discuss more. Maybe one thing about risk as well, because it was mentioned in the survey, I fully agree. One of the biggest risks is data security and privacy, which is, I have a kind of a contrarian opinion to many, which is that I believe the future of AI, especially for organizations like us, who sometimes have data that is really sensitive, like let's say in human rights situations where we deal with human rights organizations in different countries, with individual activists, as information that should never get out, that we definitely do not want to put into ChatGPT and have it end up on OpenAI servers and being used for training data anywhere. The future, I believe, is organizations like us, and frankly every organization, having a large language model sitting in the house on our own servers that is not in the cloud, that we control. And there we can enter anything in terms of data, personal data, sensitive data, because we know we have full control over it. Nobody else can read it. It's not connected to the internet. Nobody's training on it. It's our data. And yet we can get the full benefit. The only way to realize that is to go local, disconnected AI in your own organizations, which is why I'm a huge proponent of open source AI systems, and any kind of regulation effort that tries to prevent the open source participation movement in this, I see as very difficult, because then we hand over control to the big players, to OpenAI, to Microsoft, to Google, and they will determine what the algorithms are. They will determine what the training data sets are, and we cannot give away that kind of control, particularly not over sensitive data that we have. That's just my general positioning, but happy to discuss in the course of the conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Johannes. That was quite a powerful introduction and sort of a call to use this technology, but use it wisely. But I want to sort of pass the ball back to Teresa and Mong. Do you want to sort of respond to this, to the questions around how do we, as civil society, can sort of maintain some level of control over the data that is being used, or do you have recommendations or in terms of what kind of AI model might be more useful than others? What is your experience with this?
Because I work for nonprofit foundation, I can't tell you which products you should use. But I would underline what Johannes said, that open source, open data products are always the better choice, and then giving all the powers to big corporations like Microsoft or even OpenAI that's becoming so big. And there are alternatives, and I think if we manage to support them more, I hope that there will be more. Like the large language model Bloom is very promising. It's not perfect, but it's better in efforts than GPT, for instance, because the problem that we can have in the future is that the training of these large language models is so expensive and is so resource driven that only a few companies can afford to train these models. And the fear is that we're going to have 3 to 5 large language models or foundational models, and that all these different products will build up on, and will have all the problems that these foundations have in their, if we're building a house and the ground is already shaking, and with all the biases that we have in the data and so on, these products on top will be also shaky and biased and problematic. And the hope would be that we have more open source, more community-driven, more non-profit products, and also foundational models. The hope would be that we have stronger foundations and that these products will be less shaky than the for-profit ones. But as I said, it's a question of finance and resources also. And I know that in this sector, lots of organizations don't have the resources to build to train a large language models. But Bloom would be a good product or good large language models that we can learn from.
Yeah, thank you. I'm curious to hear more about from Johannes in a moment about his idea of housing sort of a large language model within his organization. But before we sort of dive into this, you put it in the chat right now. There's also a question in the chat from India, where NGOs are constantly under the radar of the government. And so they say, on the one hand, AI offers a lot of possibilities, and on the other hand, it could expose us as well. So data protection becomes very important, as well as access. Mong, do you have any experience that you might want to share when it comes to sort of, on the one hand, the data protection issues, and on the other hand, the access and advocacy side?
Yeah, perhaps 2 points. One, if AI will be integrated in governance decisions, especially in identifying segments of the population which should be given access to services, that's good. But what if targeting a population that can be subject to law enforcement regulation? So that is one aspect that we should be concerned. The use of AI in governance, it could deprive many people of access to services, especially if there are concerns about discrimination. The second point that I'd like to raise is that not all knowledge in our communities are coded digitally. Not all our knowledge are written in English or in several major languages. So that is another challenge for us. The danger of delegitimizing this knowledge, which are not virtually accessible. So that is a challenge for us. So it is not that we are rejecting generative AI, but that is something that we should work. Because in the next few years, I'm sure governments and stakeholders will discuss about AI and its impact on job creation and governance, but the long-term impact of promoting access and how it can really empower the lives of many. So that I think that should be a continuing conversation.
Yeah, thank you. That's very important to keep in mind and follow this. The road to both allow access and to make AI more inclusive in the long run. Johannes, I wanted to come back to your idea that you also just posted in the chat concerning housing sort of your own large language model in your organization. I mean, this is quite an interesting, innovative approach. Can you tell us a little bit about this idea and how far you are in sort of implementing this, or what are your ideas about this, and what will be the consequences?
Yeah, not far in implementing yet. Well, Teresa is right. To do foundational models is very expensive. There are providers who are already offering services like this to train your own large language model, like Mosaic is one of the big providers, just been acquired by another company. So there are big moves around in the tech space. They're not affordable yet. Like we're talking six figures that most organizations can afford. There are open source movements as well. There's one movement called GPT for All, which is a much less powerful language model, but it is open source and you can run it on your own laptop today. And you can, if you know a little bit of Python, and you can set it up in an hour or half an hour. I've run it on my own laptop. And then you have a kind of a ChatGPT thing on your own laptop that you can ask questions, not at the level of ChatGPT, not even 3.5, maybe GPT-3, but you can extrapolate that. This will develop. So going forward, in a year from now, in 2, we will have open source models that you can run on your own PC that are at the level of 3.5, and then at the level of GPT-4, and so on. You will need to invest in a little bit of resources in the house, somebody who knows a bit how to code, how to set up a Python app and a server on the back end, and so on. It's not rocket science, frankly, because it's all open source library, but you need to invest a little bit of thinking. And then you could at least start in a kind of 2-tier approach. You can still introduce ChatGPT in your organization, use it for lots of non-sensitive tasks where it's the industry standard and the most powerful model. And when it comes to sensitive data, you can provide a tailored app for one specific purpose, maybe just for to screen certain reports that contain sensitive data or something, because the more tailored the purpose is of a open source language model, the less powerful it actually needs to be, and the more realistic it is to come up with something. But yes, Teresa is right. You need to invest a little bit of resources in your organization. And she's also right, they're not on par with what the industry offers at the for-profit, high-end, cutting edge of spectrum. I'm thinking in the future. And in the future, my prediction is, and we'll see if I'm right or not, the prediction is that the industry will realize that the real added value of AI is AI that you can trust yourself when your data doesn't go into the cloud. I believe that eventual Apple will come up with an AI on your phone where the data doesn't go out in your phone, and other phone providers as well, because they understand there's a really, really concerning issue around privacy, my personal life going into the cloud. It's one thing if it's my social media conversation. It's one thing if it's everything that happens on your phone. They even like efforts to code the proprietary knowledge of groups or organizations in a local way, that way. Let's say, Mong just said that there's so much knowledge that is not documented anywhere. Indigenous, ecological knowledge from people, the only way you actually get to that is to talk to people and do interviews. And in the past, it was very difficult to do because encoding that into reports or something yields very little outcome in terms of other people adopting. But now think forward, let's say you can have interviews with hundreds and hundreds of people in your local community, anywhere in the world, indigenous community, whatever, not, in a language, in Tagalog, whatever, doesn't have to be English. The AI records the interview, transcribes it automatically because it can deal with all the languages, transcribes all the content, and uses that as a training data to develop a proprietary training model that is a representation of the cultural knowledge of that group. And that's the very specific purpose of that particular language model. And that language model can live locally. It doesn't go into the cloud. And anyone in the community and outside, well, what it means, could maybe get access to that model, and you can have conversation with that model. And what is revealed in the conversation is the cultural knowledge of all the people that have been interviewed. And on the basis of their interviews, the AI was trained. I think this is a huge vision that we can have when it comes to introducing the knowledge of communities that are not represented in the large data sets of the for-profit models, and never will, because they have no financial incentive to do so. But if organizations like us could do that effort, as maybe UNESCO can support these kind of efforts, but we need to be aware of the possibilities. Right now, very few people are thinking in these terms and trying that out. And of course, the tools are still not fully there because open source models are not as powerful as the profit models. But this is the vision we should aspire to, and where we should aim to go with this.
A call to develop our own large language model that is more inclusive and accountable and transparent. Yeah, perhaps Mong, do you want to sort of, I don't know, play with this idea, or what is your perspective on how can we move forward from here?
Yeah, as I said earlier, we're really curious about generative AI and its potential. I'm sure its development will continue to proceed in the next few years, and its potential for us. I mean, we're open to the possibilities. At the same time, we are also aware that there will be AI products that will be used in a popular way in the public, and that is also what our intervention should be available for that. There will be AI products that will be more popular than others. And these AI products will have a lot of impact in our communities. So our intervention should be there from the beginning in terms of engaging developers, telling lawmakers, regulators about its future impact in the future, and preparing our communities. The basic principles in preparing our communities about the AI products that will be popularly used.
Yeah, and you spoke also about the issue of access earlier. What is your take on this? In terms of access, should we strive for everyone should have access to these technologies? What does it require, or is it what is your position?
Yes, I think access is essential because it's not just about the cost of access, the reliability of connection. It's also, we have reached a point where access to the internet is not just for communication, but accessing government services. And also for employment, livelihood opportunities, including in the remote areas. So the potential of AI in improving the delivery of services should not be discounted. So we live in a community where there is a digital divide, and so we have questions about how this divide. And here comes generative AI. What will be the impact? Will it worsen the divide? What will be the impact on the digital gap? So again, as civil society, our intervention should be how to improve access, promote access, at the same time make these spaces safer for the use of our people.
Yes, thank you. Perhaps one last question to Teresa before we go to the into the discussion with everyone. You mentioned earlier, your the tech exploration that you did, also as a way of giving people access to this new technology, letting them play with this, and drawing their conclusions from this. How did you proceed with this? And are there any recommendations that you can give to us?
Yeah, for sure. So we just wrapped up the so-called Tech Exploration in der Wohlfahrt, which means tech exploration in the social welfare organizations, which is a very, I think, peculiar thing. It's focused on Germany, the welfare sectors, because they play a key role in the delivery of welfare services in Germany. That like Caritas, I think someone from Caritas Spain is also here, and DRK, so the Red Cross, and all these kinds of actors. And this program buys into what also Johannes said with riding the wave and learning, and also what I said earlier with the more meta thing with NGOs have to engage more with this topic and maybe also develop their own systems and build up competence. And that's what we did in this tech exploration. Last year, we published a study, but only in German, unfortunately, on a tech fellowship for this welfare sector. And these organizations stated that they see potential in harnessing artificial intelligence in their organizations, but they have no capabilities or not much, no resources, and also no ideas where artificial intelligence can support them in their mission. And so we started this tech exploration as a first step before a tech fellowship. And this tech exploration was a exploratory phase where 4 explorations teams with 2 techies each delved into 4 welfare organizations and developed concrete application ideas. So no products, it was just ideas because it's 6 weeks, and in collaboration with the employees and the clients. And these techies, we call them explorers, had expertise in product management and software management and UX and service design. And they accompanied these selected welfare organizations during 2-week sprints, so 3 sprints. And the first step was to identify areas or processes that currently cause pain and that could be improved and maybe could be improved by algorithmic systems. And I have to say one caveat, we didn't talk about generative AI systems because that's way too complex. We mainly talked about rule-based algorithmic decision systems or very simple machine learning systems and not generative AI. So they didn't develop the next GPT. And in a second step, these application areas were identified where the use of algorithmic decision systems could create value, and particular for the clients and the employees. But our focus was that the technology, or the focus of our project in general, is that the technology has to be beneficial for the clients and for the people that are directly affected by it. And if it helps to mitigate administrative pain points, that's very good. But the main focus should be on bringing value to the clients. And then finally, at the last sprint, they had to come up with a concrete application idea for the use of algorithms in that particular organization and presented by the end of the 6 weeks. And overall, the teams had developed a total of 13 concrete application ideas, and all of which addressed pain points in the organizations that they've found out and that would create immediate value for the clients. And we found that this type of approach with this tech exploration is a very suitable method to find socially oriented and practice-oriented application ideas for the use of algorithms, because we often see that these systems are not developed with the benefits of society in mind, but for the benefit of the company in mind. But it is essential to involve the needs and perspective of the affected individuals from the beginning, and that's what we did with the tech exploration. And it was just our first pilot, but we have been learning so much about how to do such a program, and we have learned so much about the pain points and where technology can actually help and where not, because if you don't have enough skilled labor, then an algorithmic decision system won't help you. Have more people in your workforce, but they can still help in solving some pain points. I think that other sectors, maybe like your organization, could learn from a program like that, or could transfer it into your specific areas. So overall, it was a very good experience, and I'm still very high on the fun that it brought, to be honest, because we talk so much about it's often so not concrete and very abstract, and this exploration, these 6 weeks that we did in May and June, were really fantastic. And I can share some blog posts that we wrote about it, but unfortunately they're only in German, but you could put them into ChatGPT and translate them.
Please, if you have any more information about this, please also share them with us. I think it's very relevant for many here who are asking themselves, how can we utilize these new technologies that are out there as to benefit our organizations as well as sort of wider society, because of course we're not driven by sort of profit maximization and the market pressures and so on. Although Johannes also mentioned that this is sort of a wave that can sort of crush us in some ways if we don't learn in some way how to handle what's happening here. So this kind of approach of attack exploration might be one of these methods that we can use, or formats that can also work for other organizations. How can we make sure that our knowledge is sort of fed into the AI machines?
If you use ChatGPT, by default, the web interface, everything you enter there, OpenAI reserves itself the right to train future models with this input. It won't train it right away because the training process is actually very expensive, and they're a bit selective also about what they're using for the training. But personally, you need to be mindful whatever you enter ChatGPT might be used for training, unless you turn the setting off. There's a specific setting where you can turn that off, but you have to do it manually. And then it won't be kept as a history for the support team to see what kind of questions people are asking, but they won't be used for training. One way to make sure that our knowledge ends up in those large foundational for-profit models is that we keep publishing, and that we keep publishing good content, because what their model is doing is scraping the web for reputable sources. And hopefully many of us are reputable sources, and we might end up in that training data set with whatever small margin compared to large other texts that are going in there. So it's not a real way you can force this unless you're training your own model again, which is a bit of a future thing, and which can be a heavy effort.
Here's another question for you in the chat. So thank you for the input. So you would say that the first step to adjust to this new paradigm and still take into account data security issues for small CSO would be to create an IT programming area that develops an internal AI tool for knowledge management. Do you think this is necessary investment for small, medium NGO sizes, or would it be better to outsource this service?
Well, I think the first priority would need to be to educate all employees on how to use the available off-the-shelf tools, like how to deal with ChatGPT, because only then we gain the competence to understand what are its limitations, what are the risks, what are the opportunities, what are the benefits, and become competent about talking about it and becoming part of the public discourse and positioning ourselves as organizations. That won't happen by fiddling away on small models ourselves. We need to work with the tools everyone is using. So we need to be educated and competent in that. That's, I think, the first priority. And then you're right, the smaller the organization, the less sense this makes. But as I said, it could be one person given the time to fiddle around with it, with a certain amount of time that they have at its disposal. Maybe do a 2-week hackathon to see what can be done. It's less to create a product right now that your organization would use. It's more, again, as an organization to gain the competence. Oh, what is possible? What is the current state of the world in terms of open source libraries? What can they do? What can they not do? So that when the time is ready, and there are models available that are powerful enough, or maybe even products that are affordable to small NGOs, that then you can jump on it and then can invest. But you cannot make that investment 2 years from now if you don't educate yourself already in those 2 years starting now. So somebody in your organization, probably not a big team or anything, but 1 or 2 people, should look into it and educate themselves so that they can inform their management and say, oh, now it seems the models are ready, and now there are some products out there that we might be able to afford that can do this thing for us, that can host an on-site model for us, that can do X, Y, Z. But for that, you need to use the time now to be familiar with off-the-shelf tools and be familiar with the use cases within your organizations on what you might be using this in the future. What are potential scenarios? What are the sensitive scenarios in your organization where you do not want to hand data over to OpenAI? What are those use cases? Describe them, be aware of them, and understand the limitations in dealing with them so that when time comes and the tech is ready, you are ready as well.
In the absence of further questions at the moment, I would like to ask a question to the audience. My question is, what have you used ChatGPT for?
I always envied Alexander the Great for having Aristotle. This is how to, because he was the best. He had the best mentor to ask and consult, and then the great ideas comes. And now everybody has this in just to ask any question, to be informed about anything. So this is amazing. This is crazy. And to ask and compile things together where it takes hours or days or weeks of work, now you can just ask the most intelligent something and get informed about so many things. We always say tools are extension of a human ability. So the more ability you have, the better results you can get. So even some people are better in asking the questions and generating more and using the tool for more coding and stuff. And some people, of course, use it in something else. So yeah, to just get better informed. But what I wanted to say is something else, is that I think with this powerful technology, it gives us more of who we are and what we want. This brilliant facilitators here and the audience, I guess we have our heart for the good, I think, and we use it for how to deliver better services to the people in need. And I work for the German Red Cross. This is what we have in mind all day long. So whatever we do there, we do for this reason. But other corporate who seek profit and money, they are using it for something else. And as Teresa mentioned, it costs so much, hundreds of millions to do this. Why they will pay it? They want return. And to combine that, something that was not mentioned here, I would like to ask this question before I finish. Because there is so many things happened before where our phones are, I will speak about just what we know, not the secrets. Just what we know. Our phones are recording our talking and recording our location. We gave permission for this to use some apps and some things. And then everything we speak, even our emails are recorded and Teams calls and stuff and what we do. And then our private conversation and then WhatsApp with the family and then your credit card information and all of that combined. And suddenly we have the AI now to deal with that. So I don't know how many of our decisions is really our decisions. I don't know if what I think now is really what I think, because I don't know. Now there is somebody who knows me much better than my mom. Like they know exactly everything about me. They present things in a way that I think this, but it's in reality, I don't know why I think this, or is this really what I think? So my question, how much of our thinking is really our thinking now? With all this advancement. Thank you very much.
I mean, that's a very philosophical question, and that could be like a whole seminar or week of discourse about it. I try to be a little bit more optimistic about it, and I think what you said maybe also play into this doomsday. The robots are going to overtake us, and these generative AI models are going to take over as humans and destroy us, maybe. And there's been, these open letters of Musk and his pals. But I try to be a little bit more optimistic because, yes, they can be very powerful, especially these generative AI models. But we're still more advanced in our human intelligence. That's why I don't really like the term artificial intelligence, because I think there's still something unique that makes us humans and that separates us from these softwares and machines. And I think that we do still have the power to change certain dynamics in this sphere. Of course, our phones have become very powerful, dictating maybe our lives and knowing lots about us. But there's also regulation. We have the the Data Protection Act in the EU, and we have now the preparations for the EU AI Act, which are all not perfect, but it shows that we as humans are dealing with these problems that might come to us or are already here. But I try to be a little bit more optimistic that we will not be dominated or ruled by artificial intelligence.
There was someone posted a link here to an article about the potential of artificial intelligence to shift the power dynamics in humanitarian development sector. So, the idea that we talk a lot about the decolonization of the aid system and so on. Do you have an idea of how this could sort of add to this shifting power paradigm? Is generative AI something that is a danger, to in terms of concentrating power again, sort of in the global north rather than the global south, or is it a tool that we can use to shift the power, or is it maybe both in some way?
I think we are at the stage where we're just in a few months into the release of the generative AI, although we know it has been there for many years. But it has been only a few months where a large number of people came to realize that this technology is available. And its impact in our lives are being reflected on the concerns of many people about its uses for the education, for governance, for communication, for careers, for livelihoods, for delivery of services. I'm not sure that people expect that this will change the world instantly, but it will have a lot of impact. In the same way that lack of access on the internet did not prevent the popular use of social media tools in our communities. It became widespread. It became popular despite the gaps, despite the limited access. So I think AI will have a lot of impact in the next few years. So it is up to us on how we are going to leverage this technology to improve our lives. And there will be many challenges. Its impact will be uneven. And so who controls information, who controls access to this information, the power to use this information in improving our lives. So I think the challenge is how to ensure that in developing these tools, the human rights framework will be the dominant perspective. In terms of power imbalances, I think it has a role. And I think it is not enough that we rely on this technology in changing the power imbalances, but it can make us more aware, informed about how to understand the interactions of forces in our society.
I would like to add to this. I fully agree that it will be uneven, but what is special, I think, about the AI movement is similar to the internet. It's a very open-ended tool. Do you have suddenly the power with videos online to educate yourself in ways you never could? And is that a massive empowering opportunity for the marginalized? Absolutely. But what is being watched online mostly? Cat videos. So it is a lot is in how we take responsibility for how we use the tool and how we choose to empower ourselves. And I believe, like this article, I remember this article well that was posted. That's one of many wonderful use cases, how it can empower small local organizations to amplify voices, to navigate bureaucracy, to have bureaucratic efficiency, legal support, whatever. There's so many use cases that the nonprofit sector can be using for itself, but has to choose to do so. At the same time, other actors will use it to other ends. And maybe those other actors are more plentiful. And therefore their impact might be bigger than what you can see, the wonderful impact that NGOs can have. But I think what we really need to do is to take responsibility for the impact that we want to see, and then how we want to apply it to ourselves instead of watching cat videos, learning content, and we can use it for all these powerful things, but it's a choice we have to consciously make. And we will be in competition with other actors who will use it for other things. And those other things might drown out the things that we do. In that sense, I think Mong is right. It goes both ways. It is an equalizer that it gives unseen powers to smaller entities, very small NGOs, even individuals, to achieve things they couldn't do before. It gives those powers to others as well to do other things. And those things might compete with what we want to do, with what we're campaigning for, the impact we want to have. So we will always be in that dynamic, the same with the internet, the same with social media. Was used by the NGOs for good, but we saw massive negative impacts on democracy. Both will happen, and both will happen with AI as well.
Thank you. Yes. So in a nutshell, an uneven impact, but it's up to us, and we need to educate ourselves. We're approaching the break time. Teresa, would you like to add something sort of as a final message to the audience?
Yeah, I have one caveat to add. And sorry if it's not the positive end note, but it's on my mind a lot, and it plays into this. So we should also hold these companies with these large language models accountable to have more diverse data sets. And that's a difficult, it's a difficult hope to achieve or thing to achieve, because as I said, they train on internet data. But these data sets are very Western, very English, very white. And this could, and that's a fear of some, lead, if we all use these 3 huge large language models worldwide, that it leads to a kind of cultural hegemony of Western values and Western ideas and very English-centered values, if in air quotes. And that poses a risk to other cultures and other values. For instance, if you there's a huge image data bank, ImageNet. If you search for it for a bride, then there comes up pictures of a white Western bride, and an Indian bride with her dress is labeled as costume. And there's lots of more examples for it, like also with gender, and the CEOs are men, white men, and if you type in professional hair, it's only there are no curls and no women of color presented there. And these problems translate into these generative AI systems. So we as a civil society and should strive for more diverse data sets. And as we already discussed, it's not always in our responsibilities or in our realm of power to do that, but we should hold the companies accountable for it.
Absolutely. Very important. Thank you very much.